What's up, YouTube? It's Andy here. I wanted to try something new for a video. People have been enjoying the sort of ad hoc talking through theoretical cube changes and my first impressions videos, so I actually wanted to do a more structured video here just about my most recent changes to the 100 Ornithopters cube as of April 9th, 2025. This is my Tarkir Dragonstorm update and also the last update before Boston Cube Party, where this cube is going to be in the main event. So, let's start with the adds. I'm bringing in Storm Beacon Blade. It's 2 mana for an artifact that gives +3/+0, and whenever a equipped creature attacks, draw a card if you control 3 or more attacking creatures, and it has equip 2. This one's a little bit sort of unsuspecting, I think. It doesn't have a bunch of really high ceiling or like a ton of over-the-top power level, but it does a couple things I really care about. Number one, it does make an Ornithopter big enough to trade with another Ornithopter. By trade with, I mean just destroy another Ornithopter in combat. So some equipment, gives +1/+0 or something, and that doesn't actually. You can still just block that indefinitely with an O2. So giving it at least +2 power, in this case 3, makes it actually trade in combat, which is very real. It also provides card advantage, and specifically card advantage that only works if you are aggressive, because I have been trying to push the aggressive decks a little bit, and this will basically provide card advantage, but not card advantage if you're playing any kind of controlling deck. You got to be on the beatdown for this to work, which is appealing to me. And it also is just another card for the equipment deck, which is a deck I want to be a theme. And so giving the equipment deck some thematic card draw, I think, is a good slot. Feeling pretty good about this one. We'll see how it plays out. I'm also bringing back in Forge Anew. This was initially in the first version of the cube. It was in for a while. Wasn't seeing as much play, so I cut it, and I'm bringing it back. This is basically redundancy for Sigarda's Aid. This last ability is the main ability for this. You may pay 0 rather than the first equip cost for an ability you activate during each of your turns, so first equip is just free. And it also does allow you to, during your turn, activate equip abilities at instant speed, which sounds kind of weird because you think instant speed, you think your opponent's turn most of the time, but in this case what it lets you do is basically, it makes it really hard to just chump block your big equipped creatures, because if you have a couple Ornithopters attacking, then they got to block them all if they want to actually, save themselves from getting hit by one of your equipment, because you can always instant speed, move things around after blocks are declared. This has never been in the cube alongside Belt of Giant Strength, which is a more recent addition. This is kind of redundancy for Colossus Hammer in the Hammer Sigarda's Aid combo. So now there's not a couple cards on both sides that play both those roles, and I want to bring this back and give it a shot. I think it's a little rough at 3 mana, not actually doing anything in terms of impacting the board, in terms of providing a threat on its own. Like, it's just an enabler at 3 mana and a whole card, which I think makes it a little suspect. Honestly, the bigger thing I think is that a lot of players read the first line of text. There's a lot of text on this card. They read the first line, which has to do with returning equipment cards from your graveyard to the battlefield, and they assume they have to be doing some sort of self-mill or like discard themes to get value out of this, but really you're playing it for mostly that last effect and a little bit the middle effect most of the time. Ultimately, I think this card is just, people are kind of getting confused by it and not maybe playing it when they should be, and I want to sort of have another big bright sign pointing at the Equipment Matters deck, so that's coming in. Tempest Technique is a slam dunk. Not a whole lot to explain here. This is an All That Glitters with Storm, so you get to make as many copies of All That Glitters as spells that have been cast this turn, which is super duper strong. This is a mechanic we have not seen on a Black Border card in Aura with Storm, I don't believe, until now, though it is on a Mystery Booster playtest card, Croson Adaptation, which just keeps been playing for a while. Croson Adaptation is just 1 green mana. It gives +1/+1 in Vigilance. That card is still very good. This card, I think, is way better in terms of how much it can just easily end a game. I'm actually, my secret hope is that somebody will use Sigarda's Aid, and the fact that you can flash things in with Sigarda's Aid. I don't think that. Oh, there we go. Ugh, Captain America's Aid. Ugh. It allows you to cast art equipment spells as though they had flash, and I'm really hoping somebody gets to basically steal their opponent's Storm count with Tempest Technique on their opponent's turn at the end step with Sigarda's Aid, just to basically untap with a bunch of big guys. Obviously, this is really thematic with just the sort of storming off with Ornithopters theme, which is present through a lot of the decks. And yeah, slam dunk. I'm going to need like 12 to 20 copies of this to put in the token box. So if you have one, send it my way. I'm also bringing in Eviscerator's Insight. This has been sitting right on the cusp of being in the main list for a long time. It's been in the maybe board. It's not very efficient in terms of mana. 2 mana, sack a creature or artifact, draw a card, flashback for 5 mana. Draw 2 cards. Very importantly, draw 2 cards. So it's not very efficient in terms of mana, but it is draw 4 for 1 card, and that kind of card efficiency I think is very important in this environment. I think ultimately this will end up kind of being like the Thoughtcast effects, which have proved to be so great in terms of just being thematic, good bread and butter effects for the blue decks that I think I started on just Thoughtcast, and now I'm on Thoughtcast, Reverse Engineer, Meeting of Minds, Voyage Home. I'm playing a bunch of sort of lesser Thoughtcasts, and this is a lesser Village Rites, but I think that the sacrifice decks are so prevalent and drawing cards is so important that it's possible I might want to be on a couple of these. There is even a functionally identical, I believe, printing of Village Rites, which I feel less good about adding that, but we might get there eventually. So Viscerai's Insight coming in for more thematic card draw. Jaws of Defeat, if you saw my first impressions video for Dragons of Tarkir, or Tarkir Dragonstorm rather, you saw that I was a little bit tepid about Jaws of Defeat, and I've gotten more excited about it in the intervening time for a couple of reasons. One, I remembered that I actually don't have very many mono black win conditions. Mono black gets like, let's go take a peek actually. Let's just pop over here and multitask. That's the wrong cue. We'll get there in a second. I don't plan on editing this video, so you get to be along for the ride as I don't do multiple takes, but I'm also not streaming it, so it's a little more structured. My cubes, 100 Ornithopters. So in black, the only real win conditions that decks had access to were Cranial Plating, Transmogran's Crown, which is a lesser win condition, hence the one sword icon. Medoc Massacre is the big one I think of. That's a real dedicated win condition. And Fallen Ideal. These were kind of the only mono black options aside from the colorless cards. There's obviously quite a few colorless cards that you can use to kill your opponent. Forsaken Monument, Banner of Kinship, Door of Destinies, Baroness's Monument, Bantu's Monument. All the colorless cards are there, but you're fighting over that with all of the decks at the table. In actual black, there was a ton of tutors, a ton of card draw, a little removal, but there was not a lot of ways to actually win the game. And so Jaws of Defeat being a mono black card in a sort of color that doesn't have a ton of ways to win the game is something that is really appealing about it to me, and I think means I'm more excited about it than I initially was. The other thing is I was sort of pondering this and thinking about how I compared a 2-life swing for 4 mana for every Ornithopter that ETBs versus a 1-life swing for 2 mana from Impact Tremors, for example. And I came around to the idea that I think this is actually better than an Impact Tremors here most of the time. If you look at it just in those terms, 4 mana for 2 damage versus 2 mana for 1 damage, it sounds kind of equal. But the important thing is that they're each just one individual card. So in this case, Jaws of Defeat, if your deck's win condition is to do Impact Tremors style stuff, that's what your deck is doing. It's not just a card you're playing in your otherwise sort of normal, fair deck, like it might be in another cube. Then Jaws of Defeat just doubles all the damage, right? It halves your clock compared to Impact Tremors. And that means realistically you have to draw fewer Ornithopters, recur fewer Ornithopters, just churn through a lot less of your deck to make this work, which it's not card advantage, but it's going to, I think, in the combo decks that are dedicated to this effect, play a little bit like card advantage. It means a lot that this is on one card, that it's worth double the damage. So I think I'm pretty excited about this, and I think it's going to stick around for longer than I initially thought. Thunder of Unity is still also a slam dunk here. This is also an Impact Tremor style card, so we're getting 2 of them in this update, so I should be on the lookout for cards like Scapegoat, Hurkyl's Recall, Rebuild, Retract, all the ways to put Ornithopters back in your hand, as well as the ones that get them back in your graveyard, like Echoing Return. They're all getting a little boost here from all these additional Impact Tremors effects. This one's still great. I think it is worth 3 colors to have an Impact Tremors effect that draws you 2 cards and loses 2 life. It's, again, for the same reasons that having the 2 life per creature ETB on the 1 card Jaws of Defeat. This 1 card doing multiple things, drawing 2 cards, so replacing itself +1, being natural card advantage, and then also being a win condition or a way to sort of push a bunch of damage. Just really great when, your deck is got a ton of lands in it and a ton of Ornithopters in it. You only have so many slots left for non-land, non-Ornithopters, and so cards that do multiple things I think are highly valuable here. This is also the kind of 3-color card that is the exact reason why I put the Triomes in this cube, because I want you, if you're playing a, Hurkyl's Recall, Retract, Rebuild deck, to be able to splash into Mardu. I'm assuming your base like blue-red or something, your base, blue-black, and now, with a couple Triomes, you'll be able to actually splash a Mardu card and actually make that work. That's the kind of splashes I want to enable with that sort of intense fixing I went for. So that's Thunder of Unity. Those are my 5 editions. Only 6 editions. Those are my 6 editions. Only 4 of them are actually from this set, but I think they're all great editions, and I think Eviscerator's Insight and Forge Anew are here to play a role as well. In terms of cuts, so first of all, I messed up one of my card names here. It's handling apostrophes all wrong on Q Cobra. That's a bummer. Case of the Crimson Pulse, Memory Jar, and Echo of Eons are all being cut. These are all sources of card advantage that are not particularly thematic. They, work better in this environment because in the Case of the Crimson Pulse, it's much easier to get Hellbent when your creatures cost 0. Memory Jar, you can play a lot more of the spells you draw even with not that much mana when all of your creatures cost 0. Echo of Eons just worked well because combo is so prevalent here and it's such a good combo card to be able to recur stuff from your graveyard and also just draw 7 cards, obviously, for 6 or 3 mana. So they all are great cards here, I think, but they're not particularly thematic. In the Case of the Crimson Pulse, I did not see this card getting played. I think it's quite strong, but I think it's a lot of text, it's a saga, people don't know what to make of it, and I just saw it wheeling around tables and going late, and I'm not sure I ever saw it in anybody's main deck or hit the table. So if it's not thematic, if it's not really enhancing the theme, and also no one's playing it, then it's good for it to come out. Both Memory Jar and Echo of Eons were played extensively. They're both very strong here, there's no doubt about it. I am hoping that they won't be missed too bad. Memory Jar especially was played occasionally by the sort of dreaded, very few Ornithopters or no Ornithopter control deck as a way to sort of expedite the mill win condition. And to be fair, Wheel of Fortune may still see play in that role, so I'm not sure if this problem is solved so much. But yeah, I'm excited to bring in things like Thunder of Unity, Stormbeacon's Blade, and Eviscerator's Insight that are much more thematic card draw, and I hope as time goes on, these will prove to not be necessary. I'll probably miss Echo of Eons the most, just because I had at least one player tell me that this was essential to their cool combo deck in terms of getting their win conditions back if they got disenchanted, and just was really important for them. But I think it's worth, especially before Boston Cube Party, where we're going to get a lot of drafts in, worth sort of making a little cut with an eye towards more focus on the theme. So that's what I'm doing. Also worth noting that over time, I hope to play even fewer of these sort of more generic card draw spells or more generic spells in general as we just get more cards printed, right? We got Thunder of Unity, we got Stormbeacon Blade. These cards are card draw sources that are much more thematic and also playable. And the more we get those, the less I'll need to rely on these to get the density of card draw that I want. Druid's Repository. Image is not working. This is the... Oh, it's not going to be here anymore because it's gone. This is a 3-mana, 1 green enchantment. When you attack with a creature, you put a counter on it. You can take a counter off it at any time to make a mana of any color. I think this card is actually pretty good here, but I don't see players rating it very highly. It basically turns all of your Ornithopters into not just mana dorks, but mana dorks for every color that you can store over turns. You can bank a bunch of mana and then, use it on future turns. You need to be able to attack, which... you can almost always do, even if you're not getting it for any damage. Your opponent probably doesn't have good blocks either. They're just going to have a bunch of O2s that are going to bounce off of yours, or they'll just let the damage through because who cares? I think it was a potentially really explosive source of mana, but people were not rating it very highly. They're not playing it. It's got to go. I will say that I understand the perspective maybe of people being critical of it. It is 3 mana, it was double green, and it's a whole card that doesn't actually contribute to winning the game directly. It just is a source of ramp, right? And the other sources of ramp in this cube are either more flexible in the case of something like... Let's go actually look at them real quick. They're more flexible in the case of something like... where's that? Moonstar Prototype, for example. This is a great example of a ramp card that also has that channel ability, which is reasonable and helpful sometimes. Song of Freyalise is a ramp card that also contributes to a win condition because it puts +1/+1 counters on your stuff. Earthcarver is a ramp card that has way more combo applications than Druid's Repository did. Same goes for Paradise Mantle, another ramp card that had way more combo applications than Druid's Repository did. The other thing that's important to know about Druid's Repository, it was originally in here as a combo with Aggravated Assault, which with those 2 cards, if you have at least 5 attackers, you get to take infinite combat steps. I said Assault Formation. I should say, let's go fix this right now. I should say Aggravated Assault, not Assault Formation. And maybe I can try and fix this. I bet it's Druid's Repository. That's probably what's going on here. I bet it's not an apostrophe thing. That's my fault. And this was Aggravated Assault. Save. Anyway, in combination with... Hey, we fixed it. In combination with Aggravated Assault, which was pay 5 mana, untap all creatures you control, you just got to take infinite combat steps. But the thing is, even with just those 2, you're not doing anything. You're not winning the game. You need some other way to give your Ornithopters power and toughness, and enough power and toughness to push through your opponent's blockers. So this combo ultimately didn't work, and now that this also no longer has combo applications, it just isn't cutting it anymore, I don't think. Even though I do think it was overall underrated. Wargate's a card I also see players, I think, underrate somewhat often. People look at it and think, okay, this is an expensive tutor for my combo piece, right? I can go and get my whatever, my important sort of recursive engine or some enchantment or whatever, and just put it into play. And the thing about this is that I think the base mode, people should be reading it as just a tutor for Gaia's Cradle, Ultralion Academy to put it directly into play for 3 mana, which is quite good. I think a lot of people don't realize they can get lands with this because it's not super clear. I mean, it is obviously crystal clear if you read all the text, but you wouldn't assume that X could be 0 necessarily, and oftentimes cards like this specify non-land. This one doesn't happen to, so I think this is great in a deck with Cradle or Tarkir Academy, which is also in 2 of the colors of the card, because it can go get either of those cards, which is huge. Those cards are hugely powerful here. But if you already have them in play, it also then just serves as a way to tutor up your best card in a given situation. I think people were trying to evaluate it backwards. They were trying to evaluate it as an expensive tutor with a fail case of maybe getting a land, if they even knew it could do that. And for those reasons, people were just kind of overlooking it. But it's also a 3-color card that is a little bit clunky. And bringing in Thunder of Unity, another 3-color card, I do want to be conscious of how many really difficult mana costs I'm putting in the cube. In spite of all the sort of great fixing I have, I still don't want to have a bunch of, narrow cards floating around that no one can cast. So, yeah, I'm losing the fight on this one. People are not playing it. Gotta listen to what people are doing. And then Key to the City is coming out is just probably the least exciting card left. I was considering a couple other cuts like Fecundity or, Symbiotic Deployment, but ultimately those cards are much more interesting here than Key to the City is, which is totally fine. Unblockable is a good thing here, and also is a lot of board states where you're very happy to rummage because there are situations you get into where you have a lot of dead draws, so being able to rummage through them is pretty good. But the whole package is just not very exciting. I mean, neither of those effects is great. There's way better cards that do similar things in terms of giving evasion or evasion-like abilities, and in terms of providing card advantage or card selection. This is very mid at both, and the flexibility is something, but it's not exciting people, and so out it comes. Those are the changes for Boston Cube Party. I am excited to see what people do with the cube. I will say here for posterity that the thing I'm most concerned about this weekend is Court of Ardenvale. I've introduced Court of Garenbrig and Court of Ardenvale. I think Court of Garenbrig is really, really strong. They're both enchantments that give you the Monarch, which is something I thought I would never put in a cube, but here we are, Life changes. Life comes at you fast. This one gives you 2+1/+1 counters among 2 target creatures at the beginning of your upkeep. Then if you're the Monarch, you double the number of +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, which is nuts. It's nuts. And if you also get to play this early and then not give up the monarchy, then you're also drawing an extra card every turn. Just crazy rate. But I think this is totally fair in this environment. There's disenchants running around. There's ways to steal back the monarchy in a lot of situations, despite all the creatures being O2s. There's also ways to do it oftentimes with haste. And honestly, a good combo deck can probably just ignore this. It's going to increase the clock that the sort of aggressive fair deck will have on the combo deck, and maybe give them more chances to draw their disenchant or something they might need to break up the combo. But for the most part, you're not super worried about your opponent just applying some pressure if you're a combo deck, which a lot of the decks are. So I think this is ultimately fine and fair. I really wanted to try Court of Ardenvale 2. This one is 4 mana. Same thing, ETB, you become the Monarch. At the beginning of your upkeep, return target permanent card mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to your hand. If you're the Monarch, you put it in play instead. Recursion is great here. It's good against the disenchant control decks because you just keep getting things back. I mean, obviously they disenchant this if they can, but just continuing to present things that must be disenchanted, otherwise they will sort of run away with the game, is a good way to sort of combat that deck, I think. And this thing, if it's online, will just get back your best thing every single turn. My biggest concern is this will be used in that particular control deck, and specifically to recur engineered explosives, which will allow you to blow up all the Ornithopters every turn for 2 little mana. And especially if you are a Monarch and the Monarch is locked in, you can basically, with that sort of loop, protect the Monarch indefinitely. You just get to blow up all your opponent's creatures every single turn. It's symmetrical, so you would also have to find a way to win the game from that point, but at that point, I mean, it's really a pretty strong lock. Originally, there was Academy Ruins in this cube, and the Academy Ruins Engineered Explosives lock was even more toxic because you can't really interact with Academy Ruins. And there's actually very little grave hate in this cube because so many of the ambitious graveyard decks, care about recurring stuff, and I don't want to punish them with a bunch of grave hate because they're already kind of hard to pull off. I want them to have a chance to actually work. This is at least disenchantable, for sure. And if you are playing the control deck, you will also need a way to protect the monarchy. The thing I'm most concerned about is recurring engineered explosives repeatedly with it. It's also going to be quite good at recurring Seal of Cleansing or Seal of Primordium. Just a disenchant every turn is kind of nuts. You could also throw Dispeller's Capsule in that category. So this could be a very, very potent control card, and if there's anything I'm worried about this weekend, it'll be people putting together that combo and just ruining other people's days with it. And what I don't want is people to feel like they, got tricked into doing what the cube was about, but the cube was punished too harshly by, for example, someone getting engineered explosives every single turn. It's a really interesting sort of line to walk, because I would like control decks being viable, and I think these are novel kinds of control decks. It's very novel to have a sort of loop with Court of Ardenvale that in this environment specifically allows you to recur a board wipe every single turn, but there's definitely a limit to how much that novelty can carry an otherwise kind of frustrating play experience. So I'm saying it now. I'm not worried about Echoing Boon. I'm not worried about Gaia's Cradle or Glimpse of Nature. Those cards are all fun. They're broken, but they're fun. This could be broken in an unfun way, so we will have to see what comes of that. Yeah, that is my April 9th Tarkir Dragonstorm update for 100 Ornithopters. So let me know if you'd like this type of video in the comments. I can shoot these pretty easily. I got the whole studio set up. I just press record and yap for a little while, which comes naturally to me. So yeah, let me know if this is cool in the comments, and I'll be happy to do this for basically all my cube updates moving forward. I don't know how many people read the blogs, but I always write pretty extensively about all the updates to all of my cubes that as I'm making them. So if you care, you can read those backlogs, and if people like these videos, I'll do them more in the future. Like, subscribe, etc. Goodbye.